Back at it here on a Wednesday. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember you can always be a part of the conversation. We stream live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch. You can be a part of the conversation in the comment section if you're on Twitch, YouTube, or Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook. Excuse me. So make plans. We stream live every Wednesday at 9 o'clock Central. With us, as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, sumersports.com. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. You can catch my show at 810 WHB.com and another busy program to get to. Trade deadline time in the NFL. Who are the winners? Who are the losers? Is there a reason why the Green Bay Packers still can't find a wide receiver? The Bills even need Nyheim Hines. Is the Miami Dolphins one of the favorites now to win the Super Bowl? Anything that was under the radar that any of the guys like? We'll talk about that. Roquan Smith, did he finish off the Ravens defense? Are they now a legitimate Super Bowl contender? Indianapolis is blowing out everybody. The OC's gone after benching Matt Ryan. Who's next? Frank Reich, Chris Ballard. More changes in Indy. Are they on the way? And are there big changes in D.C. as we have, now the Snyder family taking on a bank to look at possibly selling the Commanders? So big news going on in the NFL. Let's start with the trade deadline, Jeff. Winners, losers. Who did you like? Who did you think got the biggest and best haul and did the most for their franchise with this?
Niners for one. I mean, it wasn't the actual deadline, but you get Christian McCaffrey and you saw what he gave them with a full week to work with them last week with whatever, throwing a touchdown pass, rushing for a touchdown pass, catching a touchdown. I mean, he can do everything for them. And when you have Jimmy Garoppolo as your quarterback, it helps to have one more weapon like that. And so I think they're going to be very creative in what they do. Like what the Ravens did, picking up Roquan Smith, a team that has to get back to playing defense like we're used to seeing. And then the Dolphins. We talked about that last night on the Red Gold and Gold podcast. And I know you guys weren't as crazy about it, but I think Bradley Chubb coming in there, they needed a pass rusher to somehow affect Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. If they see them in the playoffs, they got that guy. I think Jeff Wilson helps their rushing attack, which had been anemic of late. And again, a team that wants to win now is taking big swings. So those three really are, to me, the biggest winners.
All right. On the winner's side, we'll note on the scorecard for Jeff Chadiha, all buyers, no sellers on the winners list. We'll come back around. Maybe there'd be a different view upon, or maybe we'll put it in two categories: buyers that were winners, sellers that were winners. Eric, who won? Who lost big time in this?
I think the Kansas City Chiefs win by not doing anything stupid at the very end there and trading, multiple picks for Laramie Tunsil or Brian Burns. No, that's a little bit facetious, but like I'm going to go against the grain here. I like what Chicago did. Yeah, and when you look at I think going into the year, given what I knew about polls, I was fairly sure that they were out on Justin Fields, not out, but they weren't going to build around him because they weren't necessarily sure of him and they didn't have cap space. They had to trade Khalil Mack and the wide receiver group was kind of a joke at the beginning. I think the last few weeks have really, pushed the conversation a little bit towards Fields being a long-term player there. In addition, I also think the other 2021 quarterbacks not being very good means Chicago can hold that pick for a ransom. And so I think what they're doing, obviously they trade Robert Quinn. They trade Roquan Smith. They go and take some of that bounty and they go and put Chase Claypool on that team. I think what they're doing is trying to get a real evaluation of Justin Fields, and I like that for them.
I will weigh in on everybody who sold, being a winner, right? I do appreciate. I think really, first of all, NFL fans are the real winners. Let me start with that because we had activity, and we watched trade deadlines and the first night of free agency in the NBA, and there is a buzz. Right. And you sit by your TV and you want to watch and you're staring at Twitter and looking at everybody to see what's going on. We had that for the first time and maybe ever in the NFL. Every time you looked at your phone, there was something else that was coming down. So I actually think the biggest winner was the fans. I think activity and movement is good for the sport. It's good. It gets the conversation going. And I think it's the right thing to do, right? Like we touched on it. Like standing pat, no. Like how many teams are we not sure whether they're a contender or a team that should be playing for the future right now? Are there really? I mean, don't we pretty much know on everybody? And if we can figure it out, then the GMs ought to be able to figure it out. And there's no reason to be sitting here. You know, if the teams that didn't do anything had better have a really good story as to why they did nothing. They better have 3 or 4s. Well, we were in on Claypool, but we were trying to move this guy, but because if they don't, they're fools. Like there is, you know, Eric, you being in the math community, there are only so many different ways to acquire talent. Right. And whether you were acquiring the actual player or acquiring picks, those are the means to do it. There was a market that was open for business. And if you didn't get in on it, I think you're falling behind. Right. Like, I think that's, to me, one of the biggest things is you watch general managers say, okay, we're not just standing pat. We're going to be aggressive. And not just for the activity point of it, but I think, why would you not? It's like ever since Jimmy Johnson fleeced the Vikings, the entire trade market shut down in the NFL. For 40 years, everybody said, I don't want to be the guy who trades for Herschel Walker. And so nobody's done anything. It's been the most gross overreaction of a market ever. And I think it's about time that NFL GMs just started, or Eric, that they started actually making some moves.
Yeah, but it's an overpay all the time, though, right? Because there's a few things that I think are contributing to the fact that these are, generally speaking, not great moves. When a team like the Niners trades, pick, second rounder, third rounder, fourth rounder, and a subsequent fifth for Christian McCaffrey, they are generally overestimating how good they are, right? So when they do that, it ends up being a problem because they're probably worse than they think that they are. And so those picks are marginally more valuable. In addition, during the season, when you have something like a deadline and you have something like desperation and multiple bidders, whereas like who is bidding against the Chiefs for Frank Clark, for example, like I think you almost always have an overpay. So that would be my pullback.
But there was only one first round pick. I hear what you're saying on the Frank Clark thing. And I think, and as Jeff said the other night, there is the Rams winning when they are all in has empowered a lot of people to say, that's how you got to do it. You got to be bold and you got to be all in. And I get what you're saying about the Chiefs giving up a first round pick for Frank Clark when they did it. And that paid dividends for them, but only Bradley Chubb brought a first round pick. I mean, largely there was a lot of fourths and fifths and lower round picks, which to me is great value to get proven commodities, as opposed to the first rounders are a problem, and particularly if they're high, but that you're going to get a cheap player in return. Fourths and fifths are truly lottery tickets, and to get back proven commodities, I think is smart football, isn't it?
Sure, but I guess the question. So here's my test then. Okay, so a second and fifth for Roquan Smith. Like, are you paying Roquan Smith $20 million after that?
I mean, I think
I thought they agreed to let him be a free agent, right? Wasn't that the deal? Or was that Quinn I'm thinking of?
That's Quinn.
That's Quinn. Okay.
Yeah, because like my issue is like, I think to your point, Petro, if these teams didn't adhere to some of the myths, like, oh, you have to if you trade a first for Orlando Brown, that means you got to sign the guy to a long-term deal, right? If you don't, then it actually, I think, like, I have a friend who, works for the team that traded Orlando Brown to the Chiefs. And he basically was like, look, we win that trade, but we win it by the least amount when they let Orlando Brown walk after a franchise tag, right? Like, then you're starting to think, okay, like, then you can really see the utility of Orlando Brown, which is to be the left tackle for 2 years when the team didn't have one. Okay, I can deal with that then. That's worth a first round pick-ish to me, right? If you buy Roquan Smith for the last 10 games of the year and you pay him the $500K that he's making right now, and he is who he is, then that's a huge surplus for Baltimore. If you go around and turn around and pay him 5 years, $100 million, then it's not, right? And that's I think where the disconnect is almost always the teams turn around and pay the guy, which is fine. Like I like seeing players get paid, but for the team that's doing that, it's a negative surplus. Now, Peter will talk about, the Ravens have 40 million in cap space. Yeah, dude, they got to sign Lamar Jackson. That's the problem, bro. Like there are aspects to this. And so when the Ravens took a third and a fifth and traded with the Vikings for Yannick Ngakoue, and they let him go and got a third or fourth comp pick, that's perfectly fine to me. It's the secondary moves that, where you sign Bradley Chubb to 20 million APY, you sign, Frank Clark to whatever he made APY. Like, to me, I think that's the biggest mistake of it all, not necessarily giving up the draft capital.
Jeff?
Yeah, look, I think when you look at the guys who got moved or the teams that made moves, less so the people who gave players up, I think it just comes down, for me, it's as simple as, do you need a player to help you win now? And most of the teams that made moves, aside from maybe Jacksonville with a Calvin Ridley or what Kansas City did with Kadarius Toney, are thinking we've got a shot. And yeah, it's really easy to say, well, you're not Buffalo or the Chiefs or Philadelphia where you have a really good record and a really good offense or all these positive things happening. But the truth is, a lot of teams do feel like if things break right for them, they can be in the mix. So I don't really have a problem with being aggressive. And as I said yesterday on our other podcasts, it's like I just think talking to GMs, there's more of a feeling, not even just what the Rams did, but just of overall that their owners expect them to be more aggressive, that owners like the wheeling and dealing part of it. And to be honest with you, the draft is a lot more of a crapshoot these days than we ever really talk about. But you just have more and more players coming in this league who are raw, not just quarterbacks, offensive tackles, pass rushers, even some receivers. We talk about these guys and watch them on Saturdays and think, oh, they're going to be great players. But a lot of these guys need some time to develop. And if you're betting on that, if you're one of these teams like Jacksonville or the Jets or the Bears where you've got money invested in a rookie quarterback and you're watching them stumble around and try to figure it out, you better have another plan of action. And that plan is to be more aggressive and to constantly be trying to find ways to upgrade your roster.
Do we have can we think of a guy that got dealt for, later round picks that ended up being just an absolute star? Or is the fact that you can get guys for fourth and fifths?
Randy Moss.
Who?
Randy Moss was a fourth. Yeah. New England traded a fourth round pick for him.
Yeah. I mean, that's
such an outlier, though, right? He was so done, or looked so done in Oakland, and then all of a sudden he got back to being motivated.
Yeah, is there another one? I'll say Trent Williams. Trent Williams was like, he's not fourth or fifth, but that was a third and a fifth to the 49ers for him to be considered the best left tackle in football for the next 3 years.
So you're talking about guys who got traded for lower picks.
Yeah, like that we end up going, wow, that was a great, because to Eric's point, it's kind of like, hey, why are you messing with these guys? Because, the picks, part of the value of the draft pick is that you get a cheap player, right? Yeah. And NFL rosters are largely made up with, more than half the roster being league minimum guys, whether it's league minimum of their draft position, which could be $3 million for a mid to late first round pick, or it's just the league minimum of guys that are filling out the roster that are really special teams players. Largely that's it. And you lose that value when you trade for a guy that's already getting paid, or you have to turn around and pay quickly. I get it, but that's what I'm saying. Like, the Niners aren't in the Super Bowl in 2019 if they don't get Trent Williams, right? That deal put them there. Right?
Yeah.
You think they are there without him?
No, he wasn't there in 2019.
Right. Yeah, he was there.
Yeah, I was going to say, was he?
He wasn't there in 2019.
Yeah, it was 2020 was when they were
No, Trent Williams was absolutely starting at left tackle for the Niners in the 2019 Super Bowl.
We never have to wonder these things anymore.
Yeah, we've got all these devices to look it up.
No, 2020 to present.
That's what I thought. Now,
really?
Yep.
So, all right. Well, it's put him back on the brink of it. I guess.
I thought it was the guy who was there from Central Michigan. It was there.
Yeah, it was Joe Staley. You're right.
Staley.
Which again is to the point is a good left tackle. Damn good left tackle.
Right.
Willie Rofe went through Willie Rofe up there. What was Rofe when he came to the Chiefs?
Yeah, that's what Jeff said. How about Willie Rofe when the Chiefs traded for him? I think they traded a second for Willie Rofe, I'll look that up while we're talking here. But
I was thinking of Amari Cooper, but he was a first-round pick.
But now a 5th-round pick, which has actually worked out pretty well for the Browns. I know they're not winning, but
hang on, I gotta of course open up the story for a 4th-round choice in 2003. Yeah,
that's a pretty good one. That may be topping the list.
Yeah, that's a great example because he played at a super high level for several years for the Kansas City Chiefs. So, all right, I stand corrected. I apologize. I still do, but I still will say that getting Trent Williams for a 3rd and a 5th was a great move for the 49ers.
Oh yeah,
we agree with that
without question. If you can get a player that caliber, and usually those guys are being gotten for one of 2 reasons: either they're towards the end of their careers and people have given up on them, or they're just in a bad place sideways with an organization that's just like, okay, we just got to just move on from the guy. That's the only way it's going to work.
I will say this: if it would be a rule of thumb, not a hard and fast, I won't do it. But 4th and on, I'm happy to trade for what I think I know I'm getting, like for proven commodities. 1st, 2nd, 3rds would be harder for me to give up. Because I think that's top 100 guys are where if your scouting department can't consistently deliver on top 100 guys, you're fired anyway, or you should be firing them. But if you can get, making trades for proven commodities in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, I'm all for that. Those are the deals that I think are great ones. And, we mentioned the Willie Rofe one was a great example of it. Was there an under the radar trade that you liked, Jeff, or at least an under the radar move that you think deserves more attention?
I like TJ Hawkinson to the Vikings. I thought it was obviously they needed a tight end with Irv Smith going down, but I think they got a better tight end in return. I think they got a guy who's a really good blocker, a Pro Bowl tight end, a guy who can catch the ball for you. And they're not going to give him 10 targets a game, but you put him in an offense with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook. I think it's a great move. I think it makes the Vikings a lot sexier as a team. So, and to me, how many times do you see, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah now has pulled off 3 in division trades, which you never see happen in this league. So to make that work at a time when this team is, I saw someone say, what are they doing? They're not very good. Well, they're 6-1. At some point we have to accept this season is filled with teams that would love to be 6-1 right now and who aren't. So we've misjudged the entire NFL this year. So to be a 6-1 team at this point in the season and acquiring TJ Hawkinson, I think the Vikings are in pretty good shape going forward.
For what amounts to a 3rd. I think that there are real, I think with Kwesi, what you're going to get is somebody who is really understanding the asset, and we think of these players as men, as people, right? But there's an asset aspect to it, where 1st-round tight ends are bad gambles because the position is so hard to learn right away, right? You have to have the physicality of it. You have to have the pass catching aspect of it. And this is Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah saying, look, you spent the 1st-round pick on Hawkinson. You developed him, and now I get him for a 3, and he's a ready-made tight end. There's an aspect of that. Guard is the same way, by the way, where I think buying low on a player like that could really help the Vikings because their biggest weakness on offense is they don't have a very good secondary target. Adam Thielen is less good than his name.
I know Kwesi's your boy, Eric, but why isn't it you open this by basically saying trading for guys that are going to cost you money is a bad idea. Then Kwesi's you like? I'm
of these picks. Because here's the thing: tight ends. What's TJ Hawkinson going to cost them? He's not going to be a top of the market tight end, right? Bradley Chubb's a top of the market edge player, even though he's 38th in PFF pressure rate, and he's costing a 1st-round pick. I think that there are levels to this. Additionally, the franchise tag for tight end is lower. There are the Roquan Smith thing is the big thing for me. It's he wants $22 million a year, right? So it's not just a 2nd and 5th. It's a 2nd and 5th in 5 years, $110 million. I think Hawkinson, it's a 3rd-round pick equivalence and maybe a deal that is not going to cripple you salary-wise.
I give you a pop quiz on the tight end position. Curtis Siebold, who works with me on the radio show, looked this up. We've been doing little things where we go and say, okay, top 16. We used Eric's former employer, PFF's grades, till Sumer puts theirs out. Top 16 grades. graded at a position. What was their average draft? We just did the tight ends. We haven't even talked about this on the radio show yet. Top 16 tight ends. What pick number do you think their average was? I will tell you, 14 of the 16 were drafted. 2 were not drafted. We gave them like number like 270, something like the pick after, whatever would have been one more pick in last year's draft. We assigned them that number, which we debated. You give them 300, 350 because there's so many guys who were undrafted. But just for mathematical reasons, that's what we did. Where do you think the average of the top 16 tight ends, what was the average?
120.
120?
By number?
By number, yes. You can do it by round or whatever.
Okay, I'm guessing third round.
Yeah, pick 97.
Third round.
Right? 97 is the average. I mean, which speaks to the idea that, we've done wide receivers, edge rushers, offensive tackles. Offensive tackles and edge rushers are like 12, 10, for where they're coming in. Wide receivers came in the 30s. Tight end down at 97 speaks to the fact that, so when you say you gave up a third, that's about where you can get a top 16 tight end if you get it right. And they'll be a lot cheaper than Hockenson will be.
But it's also the development aspect of it too, right? Like if I were you, I'd also look at the percentage of those players who are playing with the team that drafted them. And tight end is another, like the edge position. It's like, well, Fitzgerald and Spielberger did a really good job with this. But basically the idea of being a premium position is, can you access that position can you access a top player at that position through free agency? For edge, the answer is no, right? You either have to trade for them or sign them. As Chiefs fans are finding out, left tackles, no. You have to trade for them or draft them. Quarterbacks, no. You have to trade for them or draft them. Tight end is yes. Austin Hooper's available, right? Jonnu Smith's available. Hunter Henry's available. Jared Cook is perpetually available. Like that's like the part of that position where it's. So maybe I'll relent a little bit on how great the move is, but it also is, do they extend Hockenson as well? Is a good question, because with Irv Smith going down for 10 weeks and the next best tight end being a guy named Johnny Munt, maybe it's just one of those Orlando Brown things for them.
Yeah, I will say this, for under the radar moves, I give you 2. One that I don't think, can somebody help me out as to why? And I gotta open up the window with it again. I get that the Bills are banged up at safety, but and it's just a 7th round pick. The Dean Marlowe move is under the radar from my standpoint. In one, are they that desperate? I mean, he grades almost at the bottom of the safeties. Like, you don't have somebody on your practice squad that can give you that same kind of production. Again, it's just a 7th. Or do they have something on him that they're like, he's being totally misused in Atlanta, and we'll bring him in here and we'll make him a top 30 guy? I think that's interesting. And then the other one that how come Calvin Ridley is not getting more conversation? I know out of sight, out of mind. He didn't play last year. He's not playing this year because of the suspension. So he's gotten 2 years older and he's going to get to free agency sooner. Calvin Ridley is a top wideout. I don't understand why any team that needs a wideout that's not just playing for this year wasn't standing in line for Calvin Ridley.
Well, I mean, look, gambling suspension notwithstanding, I mean, he did decide to stop playing football for a while because of the mental health stuff, and just I'm sensitive to that. But a lot of teams look at it like that's a huge red flag. Like, how much does he want to play football? He, like you said, he's closer to free agency. What does that mean as far as cost? As far as what he would want? I think he's a tremendous player, but I just don't know, everything swirling around him, how much that is going to affect what he becomes moving forward. But I do agree with you that I would put that in the category of, if it hits big, Jaguars look great for making that move.
It's just the one pick if he doesn't play. They're guaranteed the 1 4th rounder is my recollection. And then there's the conditional 5th that can bounce up if he plays more. So I would hand over a 4th for the upshot any day, because you're the likelihood that you're going to find a guy. Antonio Brown went in the 4th. Go ahead and give me a call when you remember the last guy that went in the 4th that ended up playing the way Calvin Ridley has played in his career at the wide receiver position. Let's talk a little bit about the Dolphins, Eric. Do you like what the Dolphins did? We touched on this a little bit. We mentioned the Red Golden Bull podcast last night as we were breaking things down. Bradley Chubb, first round draft pick. This is the one first round draft pick. They got all these picks, and it's like they're hot potatoes, man. They are letting them all fly immediately. You on board with what the Dolphins did?
I think edge player is maybe a little bit different, right? Because edge is the same across schemes, so you can basically be more impactful. I like that, when you have, a rookie, quarterback on a rookie deal, you just go all in with him. I think that the next question for Greer in the Dolphins land is, if this doesn't work, are you going to do what the Eagles did or are you going to do what the Rams did? I don't have as big of a problem when a team has a quarterback on rookie money for them shoving the chips into the middle, right? Just with the understanding that there are going to be Frank Clarks in that group of assets, as much as they're going to be Von Millers. Like, it's fine. I wouldn't want the Chiefs to do something like that because they have a quarterback on veteran money and you don't have the resources. But, the Dolphins, yeah, I mean, at some point, like, if you try to surround Tua with a bunch of actual first-round picks, then those guys are going to be Noah Igbenogany, right? Like, then you're busting out there, right? So if you do, have Tyreek Hill and you do have, guys like that, Tyron Armstead, a free agent, Xavier Howard, you pay big money to, like, that's what you should be doing when you have a quarterback on rookie money. So I don't like Chubb, like, as an evaluation. I think he's not as good as that compensation, but the qualitative nature of it, which is to get a pass rusher, sure. They're one of the bottom teams in the league in terms of generating pressure with 4 men, right? They have to blitz more than most teams. And I think in the playoffs, if they try to come at Patrick Mahomes with a blitz, the guy's going to put him on a skillet for the whole game.
Jeff, are you on board with what the Dolphins did?
Yeah. Like Eric, I like it because I think it's important to be aggressive when you actually have a quarterback that's that cheap. I'm not as high on Chubb for different reasons. He just gets hurt a lot. So that's the bigger question. I think going into this season, I think it was some crazy stat where he had like 20 sacks in the games he played, and he'd missed like 15 games after that. So it's like when he plays, he's really, really good, but then he gets banged up a lot. And that is a lot of money to put into a player who is going to command $20+ million a year. But I also understand it, especially because when you're in the same division, forget about the Mahomes possibility. You have to see Josh Allen a couple times a year. And you probably feel like the first time you saw him, you got away with something there because the numbers in that game, that first game back in week 3, would indicate that the Bills won the game, just didn't score enough points. And so whatever you can do to get an edge there, you have to do. But I don't have a big problem with it aside from what I just said, just because they got a couple years to try to catch Buffalo. And then Tua becomes the kind of player where either he's going to be a Carson Wentz, Jared Goff type, okay, we got to move on from this guy and look at somebody else, or he's getting the job done. Either way, you got 2 years to make it happen. So I'm cool with it.
There are only 7 teams in the AFC with winning records, right? And that's not some statistical anomaly. There's only 16 teams, right? So it's right about where it ought to be. There's the Bengals at 4-4, and there's the Colts at 3-4-1. There is not a snowball's chance in hell that the New York Jets are playing for anything meaningful on week 18. I will tell you that right now. No chance. No chance. No chance. I mean, you want bold? You want daring? This is neither. Okay. This is obvious when you see the quarterback play that the New York Jets have. It's not going to happen. So that means that we pretty much know the AFC playoffs right now, don't we? Because does anybody buying the Colts fighting their way back into this thing? So the Dolphins are one of the 7 teams, in my opinion, because I think the Bengals will right the ship well enough to eliminate the Jets. And maybe I'll be wrong, and I'll be admitting it. And the Jets are the commercial filler for, the 2-7 matchup on the AFC playoffs. But I do think, like, the Dolphins look around and go, okay, we're one of them. And we got to go. And this makes us better. And I think there's something to be said for reconnecting with that fan base, right? Because I think it's been a great fan base. Miami's a tough sports market. Like I don't know how long you can just be meh and think you're going to have, great fans. And so I think this is, while they've won championships, we talk about how the Bills are all in because they've never won a Super Bowl and they need to get that 0 off the resume. Well, the Dolphins don't have a 0, but it's been a long time in a town that's got a lot of crap going on. Kind of the same way with the Rams, and the Rams was different because it was let's win in LA. We never won it in LA. Maybe they did back in Bobby Lane in the 50s or something, but
Roy Hirsch.
Yeah, back then when they were in LA, but they needed it, right, to reestablish the Rams. I think there's a little bit of that with the Dolphins. So I do think the Dolphins are pretty good. I mean, I don't think they can win 3 in a row. I don't think they can win 4 in a row for sure, but I think that they can.
They could be the Bengals. You think they could be the Bengals?
I kind of like the Bengals defense better last year than what the Dolphins defense is going to bring. But let's see what Bradley Chubb does. To your point, if he's healthy, then he takes
Trey
off.
Hendrickson was a huge acquisition for the Bengals last year, and the secondary for the Dolphins could, obviously Javon Holland's a star, and so is Xavier Howard, and I'm not sure where Byron Jones is right now, but like that, there's obviously some
not playing. That's where he is. Still not playing.
That like if he comes back, that there could be a possibility of something good there.
Let's talk about how the Green Bay Packers did not get a wide receiver. Kadarius Toney, Calvin Ridley for the future, as we mentioned, Chase Claypool, Robbie Anderson, T.J. Hawkinson at tight end, if they wanted to, load up there and go get a weapon. And Brandin Cooks' name was splashed around everywhere. He was clearly available for the right price. How, Jeff, did the Green Bay Packers? How have they gone through a draft? And taken what they got Dubs in like the 4th or 5th, and they took the other kid in like the
Christian
2nd. Christian Watson, come through a free agency period and now a trade deadline, and they don't have a wide receiver.
I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. It's been 7 months of this since Devontae Adams left town, and look, I've given Brian Gutekunst, the general manager, a ton of credit for the roster he's built, but at some point, you just can't. Sometimes GMs rely on this is how we do it. It's the way we've always done it. We're not getting over our skis here. We're not going to make some crazy deal. Your quarterback is going to be retired soon. Like he's going to be gone, and so he's the only thing that you have, that puts you in championship caliber conversation. And so, how you could go now? Maybe the Odell Beckham thing is there. Pie in the sky dream. We've talked about this before. I don't see how you could be relying on a guy who was already going downhill, who's got second ACL tear. Doesn't make sense to me. Might not be ready until December. But yeah, all these guys you named could have been had. And I get you've got cap issues and everything else, but you stink right now. And you're falling farther and farther behind the Vikings. The NFC North is done. Vikings are winning the NFC North. But now you have to compete for playoff spots with teams that are still better than you. And there's a lot of teams in the NFC South now that are in the conversation. The NFC West, clearly Seattle is a good team. The Niners are a good team. The Rams are getting healthier. They can be in the mix. So I doubt you want – we saw how Aaron Rodgers was when they were 13-3, 3 straight years and coming to NFC Championship games. Imagine living with that guy after this year. Just to get a receiver just for that reason alone.
And Eric, I mean, think about it. I mean, you can't be anything but all in on winning now when Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback. Is this almost a statement that, it ain't there? At 3-5, they're 1 game behind the final playoff spot, albeit with a couple of teams at 4-4. I don't think the Giants are for real. They have the kind of schedule though that I think they could hang on and have a playoff spot, but I don't think that they're for real. Give me a theory on how they didn't get something done.
I think the contract is structured where if he retires, they do get a lot of relief. I could be wrong on that, but I believe that that's how it goes. Like, I think what they're trying to do is say, look, you said all this stuff on Pat McAfee's show about people want to play with you. Like you said all this stuff about how you can elevate this group, right? And like if people, I think that Gutekunst is trying to. He's basically saying, "Look, man, we gave you the big contract. You act like this quarterback that can overcome anything, whether that's the coach, the lack of receivers, blah blah blah. You act that way. We pay you that way, and you're not doing it. And I'm not buying into. I'm not throwing good money at bad anymore, right? Which would be, I think, what they what would getting a wide receiver in the mix would look like, right? Like Kadarius Toney." is not changing the Packers' fate this year, right? Chase Claypool is not changing the Packers' fate this year. Like this thing is kind of terrible all around. The defense sucks. Like Quay Walker is one of the most clueless defensive players I've ever seen. And that was the top 20 pick for them. And like this thing is structurally bad. I actually don't have a problem with Gutekunst being like, look, man, dig yourself out of this. This is your mess. And you took us through this. And we traded up with the Vikings and got you Christian Watson, and that that was something. We gave you back your boy Randall Cobb. That was something. We got Sammy Watkins in the mix, and basically, I'm thinking like if it doesn't go that way, he's just going to retire, and the Packers get a more they get some relief, and if he can turn it around, then he is as good as his money, and then he's worth it. But right now, he's not.
Is there a name on that list of guys that moved that the Packers should have gotten that you think? I think Claypool fits what they do. I think that's a guy that would have been a solid fit for them.
Yeah, and they offered a second-round pick. The Bears came up on them, right? Like that. That's being priced out. That's Gutekunst again, not throwing good money at bad, right? Hey, we'll throw you the 15th pick. We're not going to throw you the 5th pick.
Yeah, I will say this: the Fields experiment, I give them credit for saying, okay, we're going to get some stuff around this guy so we can find out what we really have about him. I understand what they're doing there with the Bears, but Robbie Anderson, what Robbie Anderson went for.
He was thinking about him. They were giving him away.
Yeah. I mean, that's when you're the Packers. If they make that move, if they just up whatever, I want to say it was like a 6th-round pick for that. If you just up that, everyone says, oh, look how smart they were. They stayed. They didn't jump the gun. They held their water, and then they waited until there was a bargain there, and they grabbed Robbie Anderson. I mean, that to me is the one where it looks like, okay, you're not wanting to add, you're not wanting to give up assets because you think you need him on down the road. Okay, well, he didn't cost much, and that one to me, I was like, all right, well, what are you waiting for? It's almost like you sit around. I don't know if anyone's ever done, besides me, fantasy auctions. But all of a sudden you sit around, you want to control the money, you're waiting, and you look around and you go, geez, there's like 3 good guys left. I've got to go get all these guys. That's like kind of, and then you look around and you go, well, these guys aren't worth what they're going for. That's what it seems like to me. Like the him moving early kind of got him by surprise. And then like Claypool, okay, that's our guy. And then he got too expensive and they ended up with nothing. Right. That to me, it looks like they were just somewhat asleep at the wheel for that one before it all got done. But I don't know. I'm looking. What did he go for? I'm trying to find. 6th-round pick.
Yeah,
and a 7th, a 6th and a 7th. So that's the kind
still,
of.
I mean, yeah.
Well, how about the Cowboys? Why did the Cowboys, Jeff? How come they didn't go add some receiver depth?
Well, it seems like Brandin Cooks was on their radar, or at least in their crosshairs, and the money couldn't get right. I mean, I understand that because $18 million is a lot of money to be paying to Brandin Cooks after this year. And I don't know, they don't have the kind of cap flexibility to take that kind of stuff on, but it seems as if Nick Caserio, the Houston Texans GM, wasn't willing to eat the cash to make it happen. And they ended up holding on to him. Now, I don't think what happened there is as dire as what was happening in Green Bay. I think there is a way for Dallas to keep winning games without having another receiver to complement CeeDee Lamb. And his name is Tony Pollard. You get more touches for Tony Pollard. You play the way you were playing when Dak was hurt. You're going to win a lot of games doing that. I mean, to me, that's the bigger question, is why they continue to act like Ezekiel Elliott is Jim Brown and cannot be replaced for any reason. And so once they get to a place where they're giving Tony Pollard more touches or playing these 2 guys together, I think that offense will be fine. They didn't need to have a receiver to get to where they want to get to.
There's a few other reasons, right? Like Dan Quinn is not Joe Barry. When the Dallas Cowboys used a 1st-round pick on a linebacker, he looked like Lawrence Taylor and not some pterodactyl who's running the wrong way. When they got a defensive, like DeMarcus Lawrence, I mean, we're not talking about him because he plays with Micah Parsons, but he's a maniac, right? Like he's as good as I think Rashawn Gary is, DeMarcus Lawrence is better than him, and it's showing. And you have secondary members like Trayvon Diggs. Like Trayvon Diggs right now is playing better than Jair Alexander. Like across the board, Dallas has better guts, right? And CeeDee Lamb is much better than anything the Packers have, right? Like by a country mile, along with Dalton Schultz. And Dallas has a wide receiver is still a luxury, I think, for them. Do they need one? Yeah, but it's they can win without it, I think.
Is it surprising that they didn't do something though, Jeff? Like, I mean, or is this a statement that, okay, this Mike McCarthy's on the hot seat thing is now done. He's done enough to back them off, and they're in his corner and they're going to press on? Because it seems like if it was like, hey, win or bust for him, you're wheeling and dealing and going and getting somebody for him. Like this, they've never minded being aggressive. So like the fact that they added nothing to a team that they've stated this is our year. I mean, that is a little bit puzzling to me.
I think all signs are pointing towards Odell Beckham Jr. at this stage. If you're asking me if they've got a move left in them, if they want to be aggressive, I think Michael Irvin was out there saying that he's talked to people who said Odell was interested in coming there. And once you start hearing that kind of stuff from somebody who's that closely aligned with the Cowboys, it makes sense. I thought the Rams would be a place he would wind up because he was there last year, big stage, knows the offense. But trust me, if he can play, if he shows up in Dallas in December, Jerry Jones is going to be trying to build a docuseries around it. He's going to be on cloud nine. I think that is what's going to end up happening. OBJ is going to walk in the room if they are looking for a receiver to help him out.
I mean, is it Odell Beckham Jr. just won't play in Green Bay, Eric? Shouldn't there be a bidding war now? That's the last guy on the board. If you're good enough and you feel like, okay, we're going to get there, that he can come riding in for the last couple of games in December, January, and maybe be a factor for you.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, I still think there's some obstinance there on both sides. Like, I think the Gutekunst is not going to give Aaron Rodgers what he wants necessarily because he gave him what he wanted, right? And it hasn't worked. And I guess like if Odell's cheap, then do it, right? But if you have to get into a bidding war with a team like Dallas, or you have to get in a bidding war with the rest of the market because you are a small town with a football team like that, I just don't think that the Green Bay wants to do that.
Yeah. All right. We've kind of touched a little bit on the Roquan Smith thing before we get to the Bills. Is this the right move, Jeff? I mean, for them, I mean, Eric's talked about it. You're giving up a second and a fifth. You're not doing that unless you're planning on signing him. Is this the defensive star they need? And does this complete this defense and make them legit?
Well, I think it does make Patrick Queen a little more vulnerable in terms of his long-term future there. But yeah, I think the Ravens, the way they've been playing defense this entire year is not representative of what we've known from this franchise. It's what they hang their hat on. As much as Lamar Jackson is a star, I mean, they won 2 championships by playing great defense. And they've given up 2 17-point leads and losses. Lamar has not played at a high level in the fourth quarter, which has got to be unsettling for a team that wants to be able to close games out. And so, yeah, aside from getting a pass rusher, which they desperately need, and maybe they're hoping David Ojabo, who started playing this week, or was activated, and Tyus Bowser can provide that with Justin Houston and Pierre Paul. They can scheme it up. But Roquan Smith fits exactly what they want to be able to do. They want versatility. He's a great tackler. He's a great blitzer. He gets his hands on balls, turns people over. If nothing else, he's one more chess piece for Mike McDonald at a time when this team is feeling like, hey, the Bengals are in bad shape here. The Browns are kind of trying to figure things out. Steelers are done. We can roll to the AFC North Championship again. We can get back in this picture real fast. So having that guy in your locker room is a way to help make that happen.
Eric, I mean, at the end of the day, is it, you certainly sound pretty negative on it. Is there a path that this works for them, that you see a scenario that they pay him and are a top shelf defense the next 3 or 4 years?
I don't think they pay him, honestly. I think they've let him go. They let CJ Mosley go, a first round pick of theirs that had been great. They let Judon and Ngakoue. Maybe they do a franchise tag on him. And so in that scenario, if he comes in and stabilizes the defense, as Jeff said, this team has led in all 8 games. They've led by 10 or more points at one point, and they're 5-3, meaning like their defense has been able to be hawked down from behind a few times. And it's because Patrick Queen. And again, this gets back. Let's do a few lessons here. Patrick Queen was a luxury pick for them in 2020. He just can't do it, right? And their best linebacker over the past 5 years has been Josh Bynes after CJ Mosley, who's just a guy off the street. So if he can come in and be a difference maker for the last part of the season, then yeah, I think it's worth it. If they turn around and give him $100 million, then I think it's going to be a rough trade for them.
Listen, I know the stats aren't great for the Ravens defense, and you look at that 42-38 loss to the Dolphins, and you're like, oh my God, they're terrible. But blowing 10-point leads, I mean, they score in those games. They scored 38 in that one. The other two, they scored 23 and 24. And we had, hey, they could use some wideouts too. And what we just mentioned all these different wide receivers that were out there. Jeff, what about a wideout and keep adding to the 10-point lead? I always love when people, oh, it was the 14-0 run. Like, we just couldn't get any stops. Yeah, you didn't score either, right? In basketball, score 6 points in a 14-6 run is only an 8-point difference. And if you were up, 6, now you're only down 2. You can stop by, blowing leads by scoring points too. Did they miss the boat at wide receiver in Baltimore?
I don't know. I say this all the time about the Ravens. They're never going, as long as Lamar Jackson's playing quarterback, they're not going to be investing heavily in receivers. They're going to be finding bargain basement deals. They're going to draft young guys and try to develop them. It's just, from a GM standpoint, from a financial standpoint, it's just not a great move to go out and acquire guys that you may potentially pay per position that you're not getting tremendous value out of anyway. I mean, Mark Andrews is their Travis Kelce. He's the guy they're going to for the big plays. They had this guy, Isaiah Lively, show up when Andrews went down the other night. He was a player for them. I think Rashad Bateman has still got a bright future there, though he's been banged up. And really, it comes down to them being able to run the football better or having more help in the backfield for Lamar Jackson. I don't even know if their offense is this unreliable or inconsistent if J.K. Dobbins has been able to stay healthy. I mean, when that offense was humming, they had a back in the backfield who could complement Lamar Jackson, like a Mark Ingram or, a Gus Edwards or whoever,
Gus has
whoever.
been good since he came back.
Yeah, he has been good. He has been good. But yeah, I think it's just the defense falling apart is the bigger issue here than them having more playmakers on the outside.
Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills. Tell me how many guys that to me look like exactly the same running back in the Buffalo Bills try to put on one roster. Nyheim Hines to me doesn't look that different than Devin Singletary. He doesn't look that different than James Cook. What is the plan there with what the Buffalo? I don't mind him moving on from Moss, right? Because he really hasn't done much with them. So okay, fine. But what is the plan at the running back position with the Bills, Jeff?
I think they want as many players on the field, as many packages as possible that can create matchup problems. That's the only thing.
But does he create any new matchup problem that they didn't already have the ability to create?
No, but I think that, and this is something you've seen Andy Reid do a lot of this year to try to offset a lot of this, conservative shell coverage you see is just you got to find guys who may play with the ball in their hand when you're throwing it short. And so I think with the way Josh Allen plays, with the emergence, they got this slot receiver Khalil Shakur who didn't do a whole bunch against the Chiefs, but I mean he's shown some ability. Isaiah McKenzie didn't play great against the Chiefs, but he obviously has ability. So they're kind of taking a page out of Andy Reid's offense, which is to have a lot of guys who are shifty, elusive, and can catch the ball and do something with it in their hands once they have it. And so, yeah, he might be their Jerick McKinnon, to be honest with you. I mean, he might be a guy that come playoff time, they start to put in packages for him because when I watched them play against the Chiefs and I've watched them play numerous times, one thing that stands out in my mind is they do like to use everybody. It's not just Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis anymore, and Dawson Knox. It's like all these guys are getting their opportunities. So I think that he's depth, but he's also got talent.
It'll be a first if Eric Eager says something negative about the Buffalo Bills. His man crush on the Buffalo Bills front office is well known. He loves what they do up there. Tell me, dislike this move?
They are the Super Bowl favorites. So there is some. No, this is
and we're before getting Hines.
No, this is a silly trade. Like they didn't need to do this. You don't take the James Cook draft pick. Makes no sense in light of this. Devin Singletary looked great against the Packers. I don't understand. Like Brandon Beane's a terrific executive who I feel like if you're his number 2, it's just about like keeping your drunk friend away from like the stove. Like he just wants a running back so freaking badly. And like, if in the light of there were rumors in my inner circle that Buffalo wanted McCaffrey. I texted somebody in the Chiefs org and I said, congratulations on winning the next 5 Super Bowls when I heard that news, because that would have been a disaster for Buffalo. Luckily, they only end up with Hines, but still, it doesn't make sense. Like, what the heck? Like, James Cook is a running back and he's good and he's spry. And like, what the heck do you need Nyheim Hines for?
Yeah, that one, it's a puzzler for me as to what they're trying to do there, because I mean, I guess depth, but like you running backs are like, when did they go from being a dime a dozen to being, we got to have them, right? Like that's the part that I don't get. Because the Bills have got a lot. What do they have now at running back? Singletary was the second. Cook was second or third.
No, Singletary and Moss were both 3s or 4s, I think. Cook was a 2, a late 2.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, there was conversations on another podcast that I recall about everybody freaking out about.
Can we put up this Grant? Can we put up this Thomas? Can we put up this Thomas Lester quote here? I do want to dispel with this bull. It's the day after your birthday. I won't swear for the second consecutive one. This is nonsense, boys. Like, I get it, right? It's about winning championships, but my brothers and sisters in Christ, the Patriots have won like half the titles over the last decade. The Chiefs have been in every AFC title game for the last 4 years. Like the Buffalo Bills have a winning playoff record the last 3 years. Like that's because you always lose if you don't win. That means you're winning. Like you're getting to the window on some of these things. The Bills went from their quarterback was Tyrod Taylor. They were trying to tank by trading Sammy Watkins to the Rams and Ronald Darby to the Eagles. Brandon Beane has built this thing to a powerhouse. Have they won? No. But are we saying that Marv Levy sucked? Are we saying that Bud Grant sucked? Are we like, come on?
Can we back
They're
up?
the favorite to win the Super Bowl this year. They're a great team. I get that they need to win one, but the idea that Brandon Beane can't be a great executive without winning a Super Bowl is hogwash.
That's fine. I mean that's one thing. I deal with the Buffanopes.
I'd love for them to lose again this year as a Chiefs fan, but it's a good freaking team.
What? How many? You said they have a winning record in the playoffs over the last 4 years. That's not right.
Okay, let's do this. Well, that's.
I mean, let's go with 2017.
No, last 2 years, right? So they went 2-1 in 2020. They went 1-1 last year. That's a winning record.
That sounds right to me.
Yeah,
and
beat
the year before
they beat Baltimore.
The year before that, they lost
Baltimore.
Okay, you amended the statement. Number one. All right, you said the last 4 years, which
I said 3. And I was wrong on 3. They have a 500 playoff record the last 3 years because they lost to Houston in a game with a 16-point lead.
I just want to be clear. And the other thing I would say, I'm with you. I think Buffalo's a great franchise. I think, well, I mean, I won't say great. They haven't won a championship. I think they do a ton of things right. I think they're probably going to win a franchise in the win a Super Bowl in the near future. But I do bristle a little bit, to Tommy's point. I do bristle a little bit when the guy who coined a phrase that I use all the time, and I think was a great one, goes back on it. You keep running around about how
the phrase?
The phrase is fake trophies. Like being the Super Bowl favorite is a fake trophy, Eric. Until they I mean, you can't be the guy that coins that phrase and then throw around fake trophies.
I think a fake trophy is saying we led the league in rushing. A fake trophy is we signed our quarterback to a great deal. I'm not pulling on any of that stuff. I'm saying that Buffalo is consistently in the running for Super Bowls, which is what you want to be. And again, only one team gets to win a year. And I get it. If we look back 5 years from now and Buffalo never gets a Super Bowl, then yeah, I'll go back and say something went wrong here. Maybe they got unlucky, maybe this, maybe that. But this is a team that is, again, they have all. Okay, was Billy Beane a bad executive then, boys? Like, that's the question I have. Like, let's get
for the people that are on the podcast, you got to read what it says. Tommy said Brandin Beane has won as many titles as his cousin Billy Beane.
Yeah, and you're making my point for me. Billy Beane changed baseball, and you know, maybe for the worse, depending upon your point of view. But that we're saying Billy Beane winning hundreds of games, you know, with a third of the money or a fourth of the money of the Yankees, that he's a bad executive because he didn't get home a few times.
I don't think anyone would say he's a bad executive, but I think people would question. And
I mean, he's going to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame someday.
Listen, you know, I'm okay with the Bills taking a little. Again, I like what they're doing. They're doing a lot of smart things, but I mean, Jeff, I mean, you know, we've talked about this, about what worked out so well for the Chiefs, and really right now they're the only team with a young quarterback, you know, in 27 or younger, let's say, that has the championship. Right, that was the brilliance of, fortune of being able to win in the second year of him as a starter, third year there is. There's this conversation doesn't come up around the Kansas City Chiefs, right? And it doesn't come up around Sean McVay anymore, right? He was another one that had to wear it. Okay, you got there, but you hadn't won. Haven't won the big one. Can't win the big one. Haven't won the big one. And the longer that goes, Andy Reid saw it his entire career till he finally broke through in 19. And so there is. Whether it's fair or not, it's a criticism that you have to live with, and I think can force teams into making bad decisions.
Being a Super Bowl favorite is not a fake trophy. It means that people with real money are putting their real money on you being the best team, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win it all, but it does mean they are the best team in the league. They walked into Arrowhead, made a ton of mistakes, and still beat the Chiefs. This is a best team in the NFL. Brandin Beane has made the best team in the NFL. I hope that they fall. I hope we catch Josh Allen. I hope we catch Josh Allen on a bad game and Pat on a good game and get to go to the Super Bowl. But dead ass, the Chiefs will be underdogs in the game in the playoffs against the Buffalo Bills for the first time. Like, it's going to happen. Like, if Brandin Beane luck boxed into that for the third straight year, then, you know, luck's a bitch. Then you know what I mean? Like, he's a good executive.
Spicy Eric Eager there, Jeff.
But I get what Eric's saying. I think there is two things going on here that are pretty commonplace around the NFL. One is that you tend to get crapped on if you don't win a championship within like 3 years. For some reason, like, you have to do it like immediately, or you're not valid in some way, which is BS. I think that some teams take longer to figure it out. Some teams, I remember what Eli Manning was like when he was going through New York before he won a championship, and he was about to get run out of town before he had that run against the Patriots. I remember what it was like for someone like Matt Ryan, who didn't win a championship, but to get to the Super Bowl, and they thought, oh, you can't win a playoff game. Like, people evolve. You know,
it takes some time. Tony Dungy a bad coach before 06?
Yeah.
Like, no, like,
God.
Yeah. Like, you know, he ran into Belichick 3 times.
Yeah. And what I will give Brandin Beane credit for, which Eric didn't raise the point, and it's similar to Bill Belichick with Tom Brady, although Josh Allen was a first round pick. Brandin Beane took a guy who was a 52% passer in college and believed in him, and now he's one of the best 2 quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And so he deserves a lot of credit just for making that pick.
I think there should be. I know because we're talking trade deadline, we're into the general manager conversation knee deep here, but the bigger conversation may be about McDermott. I'll go back to something at the drum I beat all the time, having a defensive-minded coach, right? If they don't win again and, you know, the offense sputters or something, well, you know, they lost Brian Dable. That's why you don't hire a defensive coach, right? Like, I think I think McDermott's going to be getting it. And to your question about Dungy, he was not exceptional. He had Peyton Manning at the peak of his powers, and he got one.
Petro, the guy won the NFC Central with Trent Dilfer as his quarterback multiple times. Sean King, my buddy. Sean King's my guy. Tulane, roll wave. We are on the show together. My guy took that dude to the NFC Championship.
I know,
game.
but he's
put some respect on Tony Dungy's name.
This is the problem with why. This is where I say bunk on all that, because it's the defensive minded horse crap mentality that we'll win it with our defense. We've already got this great defense. Let's take more defensive players.
On turf 11-7, like that. Bert Emanuel caught it. Like
listen, the only reason Tony Dungy won a Super Bowl is because he was unemployed. And the team that was offering him already had the quarterback. Because if he'd have gone to a team that didn't have a quarterback, he wouldn't have taken a quarterback. Because defensive coaches back then were all like Marty Schottenheimer. We'll run it and play defense. They did not understand the value of the quarterback. So the only reason Tony Dungy has a Super Bowl ring is because he got fired. And a team that already had the quarterback.
Well, I think there's more defensive-minded coaches now, right?
Back it up. Who signed Brad Johnson? Dungy signed Brad Johnson. Gruden won a Super Bowl with Brad Johnson. Like, I'm sorry, but he did put and this was back in the day. This is a different NFL when you can win a Super Bowl with a Rich Gannon, with a Brad Johnson. He got that guy into place. He got fired, and Gruden got his Super Bowl, the first one. That was Dungy's team.
Dungy's got his Hall of Fame jacket. Why are we having this argument?
But I'm saying before 2006, was our guy Thomas Lester over here, and we love Thomas. Thank you for listening. We love all of our listeners. I'm a little bit fired up about this.
A little.
That's what he means.
If we're on 2006 StreamYard and we're talking about Dungy, our people, and I'm waxing poetic about how much I love Dungy since his days at the DC in Minnesota, are people like, he's got just as many rings as Les Steckel. It's like, no, like, this is bullshit. Like, he was a good coach before he crossed over with one of his worst teams. The 2006 team didn't even get a bye. They had to go on the road like 3 times to win that Super Bowl. And again,
he gagged all the other ones.
About more than again, the real trophies matter. Flags fly forever, but it's okay to say somebody's great at something even if they didn't win a championship. Does Dan Marino suck?
I do draw a line in the sand about using the word great for certain positions if you haven't won a championship. You can be very good. Greatness is reserved for those who accomplish great things. So I try to never say a coach is a great coach if he hasn't won a championship in professional sports.
So Andy wasn't great until Jimmy G overthrew Emmanuel Sanders and Frank. Okay,
that's right. Yes. That's exactly right, because he put his teams in position enough times, and finally, and you do that enough times, that's what proves the greatness. And eventually, the breaks go your way.
But that's the point. Like Andy, my guy Andy Reid had 20 years of putting his team in position. Like in 20 years, if Brandon Beane keeps doing what he's doing, you don't think the Bills are going to win a Super Bowl.
And when they do, it will be the anointing of greatness. Until they have, all you are is a loudmouth touting what you think is going to happen. Until he does something great, why do we have to call him great?
Because
if he doesn't win that championship, are you going to call this Bills team with what they've done? If they don't win a championship, are the Coryell Chargers a great team? We froze Eric again.
No, I'm just sitting still because I can't even move.
Yeah, you did freeze him.
Are the Coryell Chargers a great team?
That's an extreme example you're pulling from.
It's not. I'm saying when the Bills win the championship, we'll go there great.
The problem is I don't want them to win a championship. I want the Chiefs to keep winning championships because I want to be able to say, like, look, Pats fans, what do Pats fans get to look back and be like, we ran through that bus that was the Colts multiple times and did it. And like, there's a little bit of an aura to that as well. When you are, you think about like the Niners going through that Dolphins team in ¡84, like that Super Bowl means more because they ran through the 48 touchdown bus that was Dan Marino. And to the point of Tom, and which team did the Bills run through? No, they got run through by the Chiefs so far.
Yeah, so I think the point. It's not great yet.
But like It's getting written. I'm making a prediction here. I'm
Okay.
making a prediction
Will
that
be
the
a great
Bills will get home one time, and I will not like it because I'm a Chiefs fan. But I do think that if you don't respect Buffalo, they are going to do what they did last year, which is pound you in week 5. They're going to do what they did this year, which is beat you even when they don't play their best game. And in the AFC division round, we're going to wonder, oh, why did they lose to the Bills? And it's like, because they're better than you. That's why. And if you
Tommy is a longtime listener.
I know, and we love him.
Talked to him
I
many,
don't know
many
we're
times.
talking about it anymore.
He is the happiest guy on earth that he has just put you on tilt. Trust me, you've made his night. Real quick, a couple of them going out the door, Jeff. Dan Snyder, his wife, they've hired a bank to consider a sale. There's no considering, right? When you're being accused and investigated by the government for basically stealing from your partners, you can do a lot of things. Clearly, you can have sexist and sexual harassment behavior going on in your organization, but steal from the other members of the club, you got to go. That's absolutely what's going on right here, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of it, but I think the bigger part of it is there's 2 roads for Daniel Snyder to walk down now. One is the road where you get tossed out of the club, and the other is where you get to leave with a little bit of dignity and some money in your pocket, and you can frame your own narrative. And you go back to what Jim Irsay said a few weeks ago about we have some reasons to get rid of this guy. Once an owner says that about another owner, there are people in the room who are thinking the same things. And so I definitely feel as if Daniel Snyder is reading the room right and thinking about, hey, look, maybe I've had it wasn't a good run. It was a weird run and a very bizarre run at times. But he's been the owner of probably of the 5 most profitable franchises in the NFL. He's been the owner of one of them. The Cowboys, Giants, Steelers, Packers, and these guys. When you start talking about who is going to get sold for the most money, those 5 franchises are always the top of the list. So, yeah, Denver Broncos went for $6 billion. I mean, I guarantee you, Commanders are about $10 billion, easy. And so, yeah, it's probably time to get out, start walking away, and thinking about life. He's like, what is he, like 55 years old? I mean, he's not
my guy has aged the last couple of years. Have you seen?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, he has. Well, that's what happens when you get to be old. I mean, you age. He's getting old. He's not as old as some of the other guys in the room.
Yeah, he's like late 50s, mid-late 50s, I'm thinking. He got that team. He's like mid-30s, right?
70.
I will say this. I mean, once he goes, there'll be new rules, and whether they're public rules or rules within the club that are written out. He's already responsible for rules. His purchase of the Commanders, he was one of the last guys to get away with, financing the whole thing. He financed like 90% of it. He was hardly liquid at all. And after he got in and they realized, oh, this guy's a pain in the ass, they went and rewrote the rules. You got to come in with 60% liquid. The main guy's got to be 51% or more. They're like, we can't let this. Like, they recognize he's a reason why Mark Cuban can't buy into baseball, because they look at Dan Snyder and go, wow, we were asleep at the wheel and let this guy into the club. That was a mistake. Lastly, what are we looking for? Week 9. You got anything that's jumping at you, Eric? What's your go-to for this week that you want to take a look at, whether it's a game?
I think there's an underrated 4-game winning streak that's about to happen in this league, and it's by the Washington football team. They'll always be the football team to me. I think that they're going to be galvanized by the burden that might eventually lift them, but they are on a 3-game winning streak. They're at home, 3.5-point dogs to Kirk Cousins and the 6-1 semi-fraudulent Vikings. I think that they win that game.
All right, Jeff.
Seahawks Cardinals. I saw the Seahawks last week. I was impressed. They're playing Pete Carroll style football.
Clearly, the odds makers were impressed as well, because they're getting 2 from a Cardinals.
They were getting 3.5. I want to smoke whatever that odds maker who initially hung that line was smoking, because people have bet into the Seahawks, understandably, to get that to +2. But yeah.
So I'll go with that. They could win the NFC West. Legitimately could win the NFC West now.
Wow. All right. NFC West. Okay, I thought you said AFC. Yeah, NFC West. I try to go with something like first of all, we talked last night, so I won't talk about how the Chiefs are going to just absolutely mutilate and destroy the Tennessee Titans. I feel even more confident after Patrick Mahomes talked about we got our asses beat, or they beat our ass last year, that this is a team that means business. So I do think the Chiefs are going to roll in that game. But I like Chargers Falcons. I think that's a game that, because it's interconference, nobody's really looking at. But Artie Smith is starting to get a little acclaim. The Chargers falling to 4-3 better get going, right?
Yeah.
Like, nobody wants to hear the injury thing anymore. And so, if the Falcons win that game, and the Falcons were a lot of people's pick to be the worst team in football. And if Justin Herbert loses to Marcus Mariota and Artie Smith takes down, Staley, like, the winds of change will be blowing around the Chargers.
Yeah. And that secondary is beat up in Atlanta. Rashad Fenton ain't making it better.
No Mike Williams, no Keenan Allen. That helps.
Yeah, but everybody has injuries, right? And for the Chargers, it's just they're the only one that it seems to be a get out of jail free card. So
yeah. By the way, how's Herbert done this year, boys?
It's been all right.
Been okay. Top 5 quarterback in the league, though.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see. Some more spicy.
We got some time.
Spicy hot takes from Eric Eager to come. All right, that's going to do it. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember you can be a part of the conversation in the chat room when we stream live Wednesdays at 9:00 with the 2D podcast. You can catch us and be a part of the conversation on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. We are also streaming on Twitter and LinkedIn. So if you follow us on all of those, you'll see the links as they come out on Wednesdays at 9:00. Go ahead and hit that like button, that love button, the subscribe button. Tell your friends. Don't cost you nothing, but it does a lot of great work for us. And as you can tell, we're getting started with a partnership with our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Great folks, great product. Check them out. We'll be talking more about them in the future, but big fans of the podcast and coming on board. So we're glad to have them and great to have their logo rolling there on the bottom left. We'll talk more about that in the future. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Eric Eager at Sumer Sports, sumersports.com. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. You can find my show at 810WHB.com. Thank you very much